In his book, Walkable City, Jeff Speck says, focus on your winners when it comes to walkable city design. And that's exactly the advice he gave planners here in Oklahoma City and in my hometown of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Every city as it exists today has some lively, walkable area. And Speck argues that the best way to make focused improvement to a city is by focusing on those areas that are already there, those areas that have the potential to get there. Really, the goal is to make connective fabric between all of the walkable winners in your city in order to slowly expand the walkable area. I fully support this approach. However, in a typical American city, it is important to remember that for every walkable winner, there's literally hundreds of walkable loser spaces. These are areas that are just generally unpleasant to exist in if you're outside of a car. And so many of these spaces are even directly adjacent to supposedly pedestrian amenities like multi-use trails. Today, I'll be joining Tulsa's Biking and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, along with lots of professionals and community members, to explore one of these walkability losers right at the point where a major pedestrian and cycling path is attempting to force its way through. We're going to be pointing out issues and exploring potential solutions for one of the most unwalkable areas of Tulsa. And in doing so, we'll try and determine if these kinds of areas are even worth our attention at all. Welcome to eryngo.urbanism. The site we'll be exploring today is about a quarter-mile stretch of 71st Street, which is one of Tulsa's most flagrant and obnoxious 6-lane arterial roads. The organization Strong Towns would likely call 71st Street a strode, as it attempts to serve both as a street for local destinations and as a road for maximum vehicle throughput. Strodes famously fail at both of these functions. This particular site is adjacent to where 71st Street intersects with US Highway 169, making this area a major suburban hub. On top of that, the site is a short distance from major destinations like Asbury Church, Union High School, and Woodland Hills Mall, as well as many other big box retail destinations. Disappointingly, yet unsurprisingly, the majority of the land in this area is covered with surface parking lots. The primary reason BPAC was interested in this site had little to do with any of that. They chose this site due to the intersection of 71st Street with the Mingo Creek Trail. This is a multi-use trail, mostly designed for runners and cyclists, which runs north and south, connecting much of the eastern side of Tulsa. This trail is great, in theory, but if it exists alone, without proper connectivity to a working pedestrian and cycling network, people are left to fend for themselves while getting to and from the trail. And if you're interrupted every mile by a huge, dangerous strode crossing, or by being redirected around a massive highway interchange, the trail as a whole becomes a much less compelling option for simply getting around. Now, with all that background info in mind, let's go for a walk. We began at a tent in a parking lot for, I guess, the bank? Honestly, I'm not sure who this parking lot is supposed to serve. Immediately, we found a problem. To get to the street, our only option was to walk down the driveway, since there were no sidewalks connecting the businesses to the street. Once we finally got to the sidewalk, things didn't get much better. Cars were constantly whizzing by at 45 miles per hour, or faster. That's 72 kilometers per hour for my international audience. Despite this, there was no buffer zone between us and the cars. The sidewalk is placed directly up against the road. We then traveled west to an intersection. At the intersection, we crossed in 3 different directions, and we had to push a button and wait at all 3 of these corners. At the last of the 3 crossings, by the way, the pedestrian light never even changed, so we ended up having to illegally jaywalk just to get across the street. Next, we reached the bus stop, which was simply a bench and a sign surrounded by overgrown grass. Keep in mind, people are expected to wait at stops like these for up to an hour. Along the south side of the road, the sidewalk felt even narrower due to the overgrown grass, and we had to cross several incredibly wide driveways. Crossing these driveways did not help us feel any safer. Finally, we reached the trail crossing. This meant crossing 71st Street right at the Highway 169 interchange, and this was an arduous multi-step process, starting with us pressing a button and crossing to the pedestrian refuge island in the median. From there, we had to press another button and wait even longer. While standing here, helpless, we took note of the scratched up mountable curb that was supposedly protecting us from being hit by oncoming cars. Yeah, right. Once we were able to cross once again, we made it to a second pedestrian refuge island, where this time we had to wait for cars exiting the highway to pass through the right turn slip lane. And there is really nothing stopping cars from barreling through this slip lane. But there is a sign, so they should know what they're doing. We took note that this trail bridge is pretty nice before we made our way back, once again alongside the fast-moving cars, to the confoundingly huge parking lot where we started. Oh, I don't get paid enough for this. But hey, you can help by supporting me on Patreon. Link in the description. I'm sorry, where were we? Oh yeah. At the end of the audit, everyone marked what they thought the priorities for improvement should be. Coming in with 1 vote, we have graffiti removal, pedestrian-friendly lighting, and pedestrian bulb outs. With 2 votes, safety barriers between the sidewalk and the street, and more street-facing businesses. With 3 votes, we got crosswalks, wayfinding signage, signal improvements, and shelter from the elements. With 4 votes, sidewalk repairs and wider sidewalks. And the winner, with 6 votes, is improved landscape maintenance? Okay, so I think some of the auditors might have missed the point a bit. Sure, the sidewalk on the south portion of the walk would have been a bit more comfortable if Krispy Kreme donuts would just mow their freaking lawn, but my overarching experience during this walk was a feeling of unease and discomfort, not just because of tall grass or graffiti, but because of the overwhelming lack of pedestrian safety infrastructure. And the root of this problem is the strode itself. Strong Towns recommends 2 different approaches to eliminating stroads, and it's actually fairly self-explanatory. You can either make it a street for people, or you can make it a road for cars. But trying to merge the two is always a recipe for disaster. So this is the point in the video where I really want to propose one overarching, beautiful solution, a way to fix this area for good. But every big, sweeping reimagining for this area I can come up with has some seriously glaring issues.
Okay, so what do we think? Was Jeff Speck right? Well, obviously, he's thought about this a lot longer than I have. However, I think we can focus on our winners without forgetting about the other 90% of the city.
Some places just suck. That being said, here is a small list of improvements which we could implement to help make the pedestrian and cyclist experience at least slightly better, and potentially catalyze a gradual improvement in the area. There's no way around it. People will always have to cross the street. They're doing it today, they'll be doing it forever, and if you didn't want them to do it, you wouldn't have put a multi-use trail here. You might think that a pedestrian bridge would be a good idea, but ultimately these rarely end up being worth the price tag. And they also tend to fail at making crossing more convenient at all. Instead, we need to make real changes to the intersection. We need to remove the right turn slip lanes, improve the signal system so you don't end up waiting on a dangerous median. We need to slow down the cars, potentially by raising the crosswalk to the sidewalk level, which would almost function as a speed bump. And if these changes slow down or back up the highway traffic, then I would say that's a sacrifice we need to make in order to increase pedestrian comfort, convenience, and most importantly, safety. Better signals, better signage, better protection. Plain and simple. In the description, there'll be a link to a recent Not Just Bikes video that goes into way more specifics about how to make large pedestrian crossings like this safer and more convenient for people outside of cars. But you've probably already seen that. Let's face it, 71st Street is not a safe street to walk right next to, and at 6 lanes wide, it never really will be. A buffer space needs to be added between the sidewalk and the street. Where could this space come from? One option would be to reduce the street down to 4 lanes. Another option is to simply make all of the lanes narrower, which would have the added benefit of encouraging cars to drive more slowly. No matter how we manage to achieve this space, within it we should place some sort of vertical, tangible, protective barrier which separates the world of people and the world of cars. And no, I'm not talking about mowed grass. This could be a line of bushes or a concrete wall for that matter, but my preference would be street trees which could double as shade for the people walking on the path. In large, sprawling parts of the city like this, cycling is significantly more practical than walking. But also, who in their right mind is going to ride their bike in the middle of this strode? Rather than thinking about simply widening sidewalks for pedestrians, let's build wide paths that encourage cycling alongside walking. These can be meaningfully used even at these longer distances that are often impractical to walk, and can help expand the existing trail network by connecting to existing paths like the Mingo Valley Trail. Think of a multi-use path as the sidewalk equivalent of a highway, which is really what you need for a strode that's basically a highway in its own right. Keep in mind that anybody who's already cycling down this street is probably just cycling down the sidewalk. So this change to a multi-use path would help pedestrians as much as it would help cyclists. Okay,
So this one's gonna get a little bit more outside of the box and a little more long term, but humor me, let's play in this space. Imagining things never hurt anyone. Okay, so basically, these massive parking lots could be reconfigured into streets lined with parallel parking spots. After doing this, we've freed up a ton of space where we could ultimately build apartments, shops, restaurants, offices, and really whatever else we would like. Ideally, these open areas would be broken up into small plots and developed for lots of different purposes by lots of different people in order to create a neighborhood with unique character and charm. With this concept, literally everyone wins. The existing big box stores, which, let's be honest, never fill up these parking lots to begin with, would have a permanent customer base located on site at all times. When these big box stores inevitably get run out of business by Amazon, the building owner can break down the spaces and assimilate them into the mixed-use neighborhood. Residents could be a hop, skip, and a jump away from a cafe and a grocery store, a Best Buy, and of course the Mingo Valley Trail, which they can use to bike to the next neighborhood over. Adding offices into the mix would ensure that people are inhabiting the neighborhood all throughout the day, making it safer and livelier still. You can see that with one well-placed, well-managed infill project, you've turned one of the most unwalkable areas of the city into a place where someone can access everything they need on foot or by bike. And of course, any lively mixed-use development is a prime location for things like pocket parks. Congratulations, you've just turned this mess into a livable mixed-use urban district.
Don't get me wrong, I'm getting entirely carried away with my proposals and massively oversimplifying the issues. But I still think it's possible and even reasonable to implement both simple changes and complete 180. I mean, keep in mind, Bricktown, this area I'm in right now, was once an abandoned industrial district, and it was completely transformed into what it is today simply because the city decided it would be a good idea, and I think they were right. But one thing is for sure, we need to stop building places that look like this. Come on. I mean, look how empty this parking lot is. We need to prioritize the needs of people first, whether they be on foot or on a bike. And then beyond that, let's safely accommodate vehicles as we're able to. I mean, cars are great, especially if you have a mobility impairment, or the odd time where you need to host a party, so you need to gather a carload of people or a carload of party supplies. But in a livable city, it should really be possible and enticing to spend weeks at a time outside of your vehicle. And as we expand our cities, we should do what we can to make this a reality. But wait, if we succeed and we do build walkable places and people do start to ditch their cars, people are going to find that they can only walk so far. How are people going to make trips all the way across the city? Well, I have just the video for you right here, where I explore how public transit systems can help us expand our walkability within our cities. Check it out.
Special thanks to my first and only patron, John Somdesurf, and to viewers like you for getting this channel past 100 subscribers and past 2,000 views in only the first 2 months. Thank you guys so much.